Well, good evening. It's Sunday evening, and we made the bowl for Dave and Jerry, our friends, as our first pottery sale on Friday night. There's a little bit of touch-up we have to do a couple days later. This is going to be the first of 3 parts of this series that take it through what we call the bisque firing. So this is a real quick first part. Then we'll also show putting it into the kiln, taking it out of the kiln, and get it ready for glazing. So let's get to work. We've had a real good weekend. We've been really busy down here in the pottery studio. Oh, I made 20 or 30 mugs. We had bees on our property and was able to take the spring honey off the bees, and we're still upstairs straining honey. So for a few minutes we thought we might come down here and show you what's going on. Well, here's our large serving bowl for Dave and Jerry. So it's been on the bat since we threw it on the wheel, drying. You can actually see the top is starting to dry real good. That means it's got low humidity in the room. We kind of watch how much we let it dry. We're going to take the same type of wire and we're going to cut it off. We're going to cut it off. I hold it on there tight, run the wire through here, and it's popping right off. Okay, we'll gently lift this off. A lot of times I like to put my hand in here and we'll see what we've got going on the bottom. This isn't too bad at all. Remember, we were talking about our sponge. Sponges are great at this point. There's our 45 we were talking about. That's what makes it easy now. What I do is I wet it up a little bit with a sponge. Just kind of get it moist. A lot of times the sponge will start taking out an imperfection. See that little imperfection there? We can sponge that booger right out. Change it, get a little bit wetter. Most pottery can be worked a lot when it's at the leather hard stage, which that means it's like leather. It feels like old leather. This is beyond leather hard. This is leather hard. So this pot's kind of getting towards the end of when we could work it. So we just look at this foot, kind of rotate it around. Even there's a little bit of an imperfection there. As long as it's wet, we can make that real nice. A little bit right there. It's called a fettling knife. I don't know why, but it's a fettling knife. So we can actually come in where there's a little bit of a dip or a dimple. We just use that fettling knife to smooth it out a little bit. Take a look at the pot. Never hurts for one final swipe with this. And yeah, I think we're about ready to put it on the drying rack and let it finish drying. This is going to take about 5-6 days. Remember, we talked about the water blowing all the pieces up in the kiln because of the expansion. So we want this to be good and dry. So there's the second step on Dave and Jerry's large serving bowl. Now we're going to bring it over, and since it's off the wooden bat, we're going to put it on a drying rack along with this. There's a lot of pottery here. Hey, pretty soon I hope to be able to show you. This is Sandy working. This is her chickens and her pigs, and she does all kinds of really cool logos. There's one for our church. It says God's crazy about you. There's a lot of stuff on here, but we're going to walk through this process and then we'll show you some of our other processes. Be about a week until we're able to put this in the kiln and then show you the bisque firing stage. The first of 2 times this bowl has to go through the firing process. We'll see you in a few days when it's dry. Looking forward to it. So we're 5 days later now from the time we cut it off the bat, and the bowl's been on the shelf drying. So at this point, it's a very fragile bowl, and we need to take it to the kiln to fire it for the first time, which is called bisque firing. At this point, very fragile. I've got a bowl here that broke to show you. We have to pick it up very carefully because it's just basically dried up mud. So you got to be very careful as you handle the bowls. I've broken a lot of bowls just by touching them by the rim. So I always pick them up from the bottom. Always make sure the bottom looks pretty good. Yep, this looks good. Okay, we're going to the kiln, which is in the next room, for what we call bisque firing. There's 2 firings that this bowl will go through. The first one sets the clay in place. It doesn't get it to what is called vitrification, which means everything is bound together. It gets it to where it's a very stable, almost like a sponge, so it will hold the glaze. So I already have this kiln loaded, and this bowl is going to go in right here, and we're going to get ready to close the kiln. The really nice things about being able to do a bisque kiln is nothing sticks together. So if you want to stack things on top of each other, it's great. The only chance you run is if one of them cracks, or like we talked about before, one of them explodes from the water expanding into steam, sometimes it can take a whole bunch of pots with it. So I'm very careful. And because I'm not really in a great time frame today to get this bowl to Dave and Jerry, we're going to take our time firing this. So I'm closing the kiln, and then I'm going to program our kiln. We have an electronic kiln controller, which makes all the difference in the world. I'm going to hit stop. We're going to cone fire, we hit cone fire, to the level we want to. There's a chart on the wall. I know this clay likes to go to a cone of 05, which if I look at the chart is 1922 degrees. Cone 05, enter. It says how fast do you want to go. I'm going to go standard speed. How long do you want to preheat? I'm putting a 2-hour preheat in here where it'll take it up to 200 degrees and let all that other moisture that might be in there just slowly go out. Enter. Do I want to hold it at top temperature? No, 0. Enter. Cool. I don't want to cool any slower. I just want to cool. Enter. It says idle. And here we go. In a second you'll hear a click and it starts. Now, the next thing is a waiting game. This will fire about 12 hours. We'll let it cool 12 to 18 hours. So next time we'll see you, we'll be opening the kiln when it's cooled down and taking out Dave and Jerry's bowl for the next step, which is really exciting, is glazing and getting it ready to go with us. So give me a few days and you'll see the next part of the video. Well, 24 hours later and the kiln is finished firing. The kiln's fired up to 1900 degrees, plus or minus a few degrees, and everything in it is what we call the bisque stage. The bisque stage is where the clay has started to consolidate. We have a much nicer product to work with and much less fragile, but you can still see, if I can take these pliers, it just very easily breaks. The reason is at this stage is the clay has begun to consolidate, but yet it's very porous, which will come in handy when we're doing the glaze stage, which is next. So on my kiln front of the panel, it's really handy because it tells exactly what happened through the firing process, and it scrolls through. If you see, it says it was complete fire, 11:51 hours, 1887, and is currently 135 degrees. These new electronic kiln controllers are amazing because there's all kinds of error message and safety to where this kiln won't hurt anybody and won't catch anything on fire if it's done correctly. So let's go ahead and open up the kiln. About an hour ago, I vented the kiln by just putting it in this notch here to get it from about 300 degrees down to 130. So all we do is we pull up and open the door, and here is Dave and Jerry's bowl. This looks like it turned out all right, no cracks in the bottom. If you listen, it's more consolidated and I can hold it by the rim. So we're going to let it cool a little bit more, and then we'll show the next process, which is glazing and putting it in the kiln for the glaze firing, which is the last step in the pottery process.